Fear is a very powerful motivator. It can make a lot of people do a lot of things that they wouldn't normally do, right? We've talked a lot about how emotion drives certain types of behaviors. It drives more impulsivity. It drives more, survival type instincts. It's not so much of a thought out, clear path to the future. It's more of a survival type of instinct. And this is really why a lot of people use that in their marketing or their leadership or whatever else you want to call it. There's a lot of ways that people use fear to get what they want. Manipulation is probably a better way to put it, but it is a type of leadership. And it's been used for centuries. I mean, you look back at leadership throughout, and there's been the regimes of fear, or whatever you want to call them, whatever the media calls them. It doesn't matter. What it comes down to is the ruler used fear as a tactic to get the people to comply with whatever they wanted. And we've seen some of that over the last couple of years, even with 2020 and the way that it shaped up. There was a lot of fear mongering. Right, wrong, indifferent. Some people will say that it was necessary to get people to do, the things that they needed to do. Some people will say it's manipulation. And bottom line is, it doesn't matter, because what we're talking about is, why does that work? Why is that such an important thing? And the reason to understand this is, when you know that you're being manipulated in that way, you can turn it down. But there's a lot of us that are being manipulated like this on a daily basis, and we don't know it, right? Because we have the fear of not having enough money, or not having enough food, or not having a loving relationship at home, or whatever it may be. We've got that underlying fear, and it's turned on that emotional part of our brain. And when that emotional part of our brain is driving our decision making isn't as good. So why does all of this happen? The base of the brain, the brainstem, we're actually born with a couple of primitive reflexes, where you have the Moreau response and the startle response, and they work together, and they're designed basically to alert us to any kind of fear, any kind of threat to our survival. These are good things, but they only last us for a certain bit, right? Just like any other primitive reflex, they're there to help us reach the next level, but at that point they need to go away. It's just like upgrading your phone. We don't have to have 13 different versions of Android or iOS on your phone to have it work at the latest version. You delete the old version, you upgrade to the new version, and you just use that newer version. That's what our brain needs to do. As we start getting that development, we start developing our amygdala and our hypothalamus, the emotional centers. And those areas are very, very important to a lot of things. Emotionality and the reflexive decision making and different. There's a lot of different things that these areas do. There's multiple different parts. It's not just the amygdala. It's not just the hypothalamus. So it's a very diverse area, and it does things like sensation of the body. You feel let's see, how do I put this? So if you see somebody who is autistic, then they don't have as good a feeling of their own body. And most of them, or many of them anyway, can tell you that they don't feel their body as well. Their body doesn't really work. It doesn't do what they tell it to do. Whereas you see somebody with depression, they feel a lot more of what's going on inside of their body. So the big difference on this, the autism, that left brain dominance, focuses on the outward environment. The right brain dominance, depression and dyslexia, things like that, focuses more on the inward body. So they feel more. That's part of the amygdala as well. As we start driving with those, that's where we get those reflexive behaviors, those impulsive decisions, and the emotional decisions, things like that. As that develops, we start to get that frontal lobe and parietal lobe developed. As we get that frontal parietal lobe developed, it turns down those emotional centers, and we're able to make more rational decisions, more logical decisions that are going to help us get to the long term. They're not just going to help us survive the right now, they're going to help us get to the long term in the way that we want it to be. Now, this happens over a period of time. The frontal lobe takes 25 years to develop, right? So there is potential for multiple things. When we get stressed, this frontal parietal complex turns down, and we drive more of our decision makings with the emotional centers. Like I said, this is what fear looks like. When we get scared, and it doesn't matter if somebody is telling us that something's going to kill us, or we're scared to make a decision because we're going to be imprisoned by a leader, or whatever it may be. When we get that type of stress, when we get that kind of fear, we turn off that frontal lobe and we drive more with that emotional brain. That emotional brain is not your friend in these cases. So what can we do to turn down that fear response, that emotional response, and drive more of the frontal parietal complex. Now, there are a multitude of things. Making sure you're getting plenty of sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be driving through that anyway. When you do get the sleep, it allows some of those other areas, the metabolism it needs to actually function the way that it's supposed to. When we can turn those areas on, obviously it's a good thing for you. Doing things like researching the situation. When the media comes out and they tell us that 100 million people are going to die from this, it's something that's a shock. It's designed to turn on that emotional center of your brain, because when that emotional center of your brain turns on, you're more likely to pay attention. Why are you more likely to pay attention? Because it's a threat. You want to figure out, is it something that I need to know? Is it something I need a little bit more information on? Is it something that I need to do something about? And then you make that snap decision based on what you just read, right? So it actually engages you in their content. You're playing their game. You're reading their content. That's what they get money from. So that is why you see a lot of those fear headlines. And I mean, getting more information is good, and we definitely want to do that when there's a threat. But when it's something that's overblown, it's dangerous. When we see any kind of emotional response, I'll give you two great things to do for this. One of the best ones is meditation. Why is meditation so good? Meditation actually stimulates those areas that are affected. It turns down the amygdala response and the emotional response, and it turns up that frontal parietal complex, the one that's there for your logical long-term thinking. So meditation is something that most people are not good at when they first do it. And everybody kind of laughs when I tell them that you're probably going to suck at it when you start. But just doing it is going to get you the benefit. It takes a little while, but once you start getting a little bit of a hang of it, you teach yourself how to relax, you turn on those other areas, and that alone is a very, very powerful thing for you to do. Other way for you to kind of override this response is exercise. Exercise has a lot of benefits, but one of the best things it does, well, two things here. We're going to give you two again. It turns up the metabolism, so it helps you with energy processing. But it also stimulates the brain. As we start to move, different muscles fire, different balance is required. All these different systems of the brain are having to work together to coordinate your movements. When they work together to coordinate your movements, we get better frontal parietal control. It stimulates those areas to actually help us plan our movements and get the result that we want, much like what a lot of people are looking from goals. So if you find yourself, and how do you know if you're doing this? If you're making impulsive decisions, if you are in a situation where you have anxiety, if you're in a situation where you're just constantly on alert, those are good signs that there is underlying stress going on. It is definitely affecting your brain if you're noticing that. So start meditating, start doing some deep breathing. And meditation doesn't have to be the sitting there all fluffed up on a pillow with your hands out and your fingers in a certain deep breathing. Just do something to relax. Mindfulness, meditation. Doesn't have to be meditation. Breathing. Look at it as that. You can breathe anywhere. Double your exhale compared to your inhale. Quick way to relax in any situation. That's why they tell you to take a deep breath anytime that you're stressed out. That breathing is going to help to release some of that junk in your system and get those frontal parietal networks back in control. If you are experiencing any of this, there are other things that we can do to speed up the process. Anxiety, depression, ADHD, things like that are very, very difficult to work with. But if you're willing to put in the work, it has a phenomenal outcome, right? There are a lot of tools that we can use as far as transcranial stimulation or laser or vibration or different sensory training. All of that drives that area that is going to stimulate a better long-term outcome from you. So I hope that this helps. If it does, like it, share it, do all of those things, because it's going to help us, because it's going to help me figure out what information is going to be most beneficial to you. And hopefully with sharing that, you can help somebody else out there. So I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you on the next video.